Everybody, and welcome back to the next episode of the Academic Room, where lecturers share their best practices and practical tips with each other. And today we are very lucky because we have Dr. Femi Obasan with us. Hello, Femi, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this today. Hello.
Hi, Timia. No worries. You're very much welcome. So I appreciate and I count it as a privilege as well to come on this platform. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
so kind of you. No, it's really our privilege because how I know Femi, we've been working together for years now, and he's an amazing colleague and friend, and he is a lecturer and program leader on multiple business programs and modules. And whenever we ask students for feedback, they always highlight how much they love Dr. Femi. So today
Oh,
we crack the code. Okay, and I will pick Femi's brain on why students love working with you so much and learning from you so much. So, as I mentioned, you teach on business programs, which sometimes can be quite abstract, and we have 1 hour or 2 hour lectures on the theory, and which is sometimes just a lot of like frameworks. So I'd like to pick your brains on how do you keep them engaged? How do you make it exciting for them? Some of it can be found on internet, what we teach.
yeah,
So do you have some tips on how to do it, how to draw their attention?
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for that, Timia. I think I've had a lot of questions related to that. I've had to answer a lot of questions related to that as well. So how do you keep your students engaged? And I think one of the key things for me, the advantage for me, I would say, is I come from a business background. I've created businesses, I've sold businesses, so I've been involved in different businesses and all of that in the past. And I've just been in academics in the last 6 years or so. So it's very, very important for me to actually be able to link the framework, the theories, with the real world practice where I'm coming from. So that's where my first life is. And I have a lot of examples from that. So I actually don't find it difficult to link any theory or framework with real life examples. Not an example I've read, but real life examples that I've actually been part of. So it comes quickly for me to be able to do that if I'm teaching Ansoff's matrix, for example, which is a growth strategy. And it's just a grid that has different things and all of that, which they can find on the internet, like you said. I'll quickly just jump into a situation where I've decided to grow my business or a business I've been involved with, they've decided to grow that business. Which of this Ansoff matrix, which of this grid did they actually use to do that? And I'll give that practical example to students. That is pretty much what I do. Like 60-70% of the teaching is actually using practical example to cement or to drive home the points. And I find that very engaging for students instead of having to tell them, okay, today we're going to be talking about VRIN framework, we're going to be talking about Ansoff strategies and all of that. And some names that they may not even remember. But if they don't remember those names, they're going to remember the examples and they're going to use those examples to actually be able to um, put into practice what they have learned. I think that's one major advantage I have and I use quite well.
Yeah, and I know the students love that, and it really comes very handy that you have this experience. Do you prepare for these examples in advance? So do you look through the theory that you're covering and think, okay, well, which examples will I draw on in here, or how do you find those examples?
Okay, very, very good question as well. I've taught most of these modules over time. When I started teaching them, so that was when I looked through, I prepare for the sessions, of course, and for every framework, I try to just put an example across that. Like this is the example I'm going to use. At the end of the day, I may use that example and I may not. But that reminds me that I need to throw in an example into that particular slide. I may use a different example. So I may just mention that particular one that I put there and I may use it, I may explain it. And another one will pop up in my mind and I'll just explain that. But I have tried to do that from the beginning to actually prepare for the class and to actually put some notes across some of those frameworks. And when I get to class, I see that example I put there. I remember that I need to use an example, and every other example that comes to mind, I throw them in as well. And when I'm teaching leadership as well, I use a lot of examples in my personal life And I think students kind of love that a lot. I mentioned my family a lot of times. I mentioned my wife. Like I talk about different things I've experienced. I think, for example, we're trying to build a shed in my home one time, and we had to look at the plot. I mean, at the what's it called? At the what normally comes with that. What's that called again? That's
The shed.
um, the description on how to build it,
Oh, yeah. The instruction manual.
the
Okay.
instruction manual. And so I was just looking at everyone in my family trying to build that. One person hold the manual, reading it, and trying to understand every details there. The other person will stand and will just take instructions, all this, all that. One other person will stand behind and say, that is going to crush. I mean, that's going to crack if you guys don't hold this. And I use that to actually describe like personality, the kind of way we're built. And if you're working in a team, that's how we are supposed to be. So if everyone want to read the instruction, there's going to be an argument. There's going to be a fight. I mean, so just try to understand who is prone to be able to read the instruction and translate the instruction, or just explain what the instruction is to everyone. And I use that example a lot when I'm teaching leadership, when I'm teaching personality. So I use a lot of different examples when it comes to maybe personal life and all of that. And I particularly think students find that very fascinating, and they can be able to connect with the person that is right in front of them, not saying, and if I make mistakes in some areas and which I do, I share with them as well my mistakes, how my son will correct me in some areas and all of that, and I'll listen to them. Meaning leaders should be able to listen so we don't position ourselves as we are superior to the people we are leading. And so even my 8-year-old son can correct me and say that's actually wrong. And I have to think about what he says before I say, how dare you tell me what I'm saying is wrong? So I think that as well helps me to be able to connect with my students.
Yeah, that's brilliant. A couple of things that I'd like to ask you. Can we talk a bit about this? What do you do when they, obviously you talk about your mistakes, but what do you do when they spot something or they think you're wrong, whether you're really wrong or not? How do you handle these cases?
Yeah. So I've had a couple of situations where students will email me and say their marks, they are challenging the marks, and maybe I've marked it wrongly, or one tutor has marked them wrongly, or I feel I should get more than that. One particular example I remember right now on top of my head is a student emailing me telling me that they submitted their assessment late. I marked them as late submission, and I graded them a 0 because they submitted 24 hours after deadline. So the policy of the university says if you submit within 24 hours, there's a 10% deduction from your mark. If you submit after 24 hours of the deadline, it's not graded, it's 0. And this particular student submitted, I'm not sure of exactly the time, but it should be like 2:30 something a.m. on the next day
Mm.
after the 24 hours. And I graded it 0. And the student emailed me and saying, there's an error there. I did not submit late. I submitted within 24 hours. And the first thing I did was to check, and I realized they actually submitted. The deadline was like 11:59 a.m., let's say on the 9th. And what I saw there was 10th, on the 10th, 2:30 something a.m. You know, that's still within 24 hours. But I read it as 10th, that's after 24 hours, and I graded it 0. And immediately I got the email. I checked and I saw my mistake on that. And I quickly responded to them that this will be corrected. That's my error. And I actually read it wrongly, and we'll sort that out. And so if I'm wrong, I'm always happy to say I'm wrong. And if I'm correct, I will explain to them why I think I'm correct. And this is something I'm practicing as well as a father, as husband, and all of that. So I'm always trying to I apologize to my 8-year-old as well if I know I've done something wrong, because he picks me up a lot. Like, okay, you've done this, but you told me yesterday I shouldn't do that, but that's exactly what you're doing. I said, okay, my bad. I'm really sorry about that. I shouldn't have done that. So, and I tell my student that as well. Yeah.
I love that. And this is why they respect you. What do you do though when they challenge you in class? They have, it's not right, but you know that you're right. So how do you handle that? But they don't agree with that, or they find it, they can't accept it. And we can also talk about it during the lecture if you're teaching or anything, or bringing an example. How do you handle that?
I think majorly what I do is I refer them to other things, I mean, materials where they can actually check. And I can remember telling one of my students, so if you find something different from what I've said, please let me know. I'm always happy to learn as well. My own understanding is it should be this, it should be that. But if you find something different from what I've said, so I'll send some materials to you, read through that, and I'm happy to actually learn from that as well. So I've seen a couple of, I mean, I mean, I can remember one occasion when one student was telling me about reference. I think it was around referencing and how to reference if you are referencing another author within your article, within your assessment, and how that is done. And I explained what I thought it should be. And the student was telling me, no, this is what they told us in A's department and so on. And I read something. I said, I'll be happy to see where that document is and so that I can learn that myself. But this is my understanding. And they came back to me afterwards saying, okay, I think they read it wrongly or something. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. We
Very
talked
well.
about the lecture, and you mentioned that already in the lecture. You mentioned practical examples. What do you do during the seminars? Obviously, it depends on the actual module, but how do you make the seminars interactive and really useful for the students? Do you have any tips on making sure that they are all involved and can really practice what was
I
shared?
think the one of the best practices I've seen and I've done, I mean, I've used myself and I've heard other colleagues share with me as well because we do this peer-to-peer observation where we watch one, I mean, observe one another. So I've observed a couple of tutors, they've observed me as well. One of the things I found really helpful is we introduce the topic. Mostly it's a case study or we're asking them to watch a video and in groups and analyze and share their findings from that. So if you're doing a case study, the first thing I do is to link that seminar session to the lecture. So it's to for me for the student to know that this seminar session is not in isolation. It's linked to the lecture they had previously. For example, in my strategy session, they normally have the session on Monday. I teach them seminar on Friday. And all my students know the first thing we're going to talk about is what did you guys learn on Monday? I have a small class of say 15, 20. I will ensure everyone speaks. So they're going to tell me what they learned in that particular lecture. For example, if it's blue ocean strategy, what did you learn on Monday? And one person will say blue ocean strategy. I said, fantastic. I know it's blue ocean. What is blue ocean strategy? What did you learn in blue ocean strategy? What does that mean to you? Forget about what the tutor said to you. What do you think blue ocean strategy is? So what's the opposite of blue ocean strategy? They say red ocean strategy, fantastic. So what's the difference between that? So the first 10, 15 minutes will be to actually let everyone in the room understand what blue ocean strategy is, at
Mhm.
least on the face of it.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask you, and how do you make sure everybody is involved in it? If someone sits back, what do you do? How do you encourage them?
If someone says what?
If someone just doesn't, is not involved in answering these questions, what do you do? How
Yeah.
do you encourage them?
Yeah, I hear a lot of things like, oh, I wasn't in the class on Monday for the session. Probably maybe they forgot or something and they don't want to say anything. And I laid that at the beginning as well. Like you guys know, the last thing we want to hear here is I wasn't in the class because the material is on Blackboard. Except you're telling me you paid half of the tuition, you're not paying for the remaining. We all paid the full tuition, isn't it? I want to benefit from what we've paid for. So if you do not have any opportunity to attend a lecture, you are shortchanging yourself by not going to the Blackboard to read what has been shared there. So having laid that background, I kind of encouraged everyone to speak. And what they do, what I realized later is this: they make sure before they come to class, they go to the Blackboard and read something that they're going to share with me. And the first week, second week, third week, by the fourth week, I find everyone sharing. Even if they're going to say one sentence, they're going to share something with me. And that's how I encourage. And if somebody says, I don't know or I can't remember, I said, that's fantastic. At least you just spoke now. We hear your voice. We can hear your voice. What I don't want is not hearing anyone's voice. No one is going to leave my class without me hearing your voice. So we kind of joke around it, but I still use that to encourage them that you must say something. And what I've realized is no matter how small, or how inconsequential what you have said is, I'm going to encourage you that you've done fantastically well by just mentioning that phrase. That's really very good. So maybe next week you're going to, do much better. So I give them about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go over the case study. Mostly we have short cases, maybe 5 pages, 7 pages, and I ask them to read individually for the next 20 minutes, then discuss as a group for another 20 minutes, then take some notes and answer the questions in the case studies. Then I don't give them the option to select who is going to share. I tell them I'm going to select, and then in some weeks I'll ask all of them to share one after the other, and everyone is going to speak, because I always encourage them that you must all speak. I must hear all your voices, hear all your voices. So that's how we do it. 20 minutes read individually, the next 20 minutes discuss as a group, take some points. Then I select 1 or 2 people within the group to share. Sometimes I tell them we need to learn presentation skill as well. So you guys have to come to the front to share and present right in front of people. I always let them know that this is one thing I was scared of myself, but the only way I learned it is to actually step up and do it. While I was doing my MBA, most of my lecturers will be telling me, Femi, you're lagging behind in class participation, because I'm probably just going to sit down. I'm not going to say anything until I'm called. I share that with my students as well, and that I never knew I'm going to be teaching for a living, but that was what I used to do. But it's not a good practice to sit down and not speak. So I encourage them to do that, and I ask them to share. They come out and share. I'm not just sharing that. So at the end of the day, I'm going to link that back to Blue Ocean strategy. So what they're going to tell me is how that particular company implemented new strategies, which is Blue Ocean strategy, and what is the outcome. So everyone will understand at the end of the class. So I spent the last 15 minutes linking what they have said to the case study, and that drives home the point for them.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And you mentioned that you're also engaged. That was a very good point, that you are not simply leave the room and do something else. So how are you engaging? Do you walk around, or what do you do to be engaged?
Yeah. So while they're reading individually, I walk around, and I can stand just behind one group and just be watching them. So they may be having discussion and saying something. I'm looking at them. I mean, one of the members is not engaging. I'm probably just going to ask him, that person jokingly, are you creating your own group, or you are still part of this group? So yeah, I'm part of this group. Oh, okay. I'm just asking, and I'll move to the other person. So they know I'm going to be coming around. Give or take, I say about 80 or 90% of them will participate. You still find some 10% that will stay on their phone. When they see me coming, they drop the phone and so on and so forth. But that's how I ensure they all, largely, by and large, I still see, large activities going on around the class. But if they realize that I'm just going to sit in front, they probably just be doing whatever they want to do. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to get the outcome I desire.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Very good tip. I put it down. Now, a little bit about the assessments, because obviously this is coming up for them at the end of the semester. How do you prepare them for that? How do you make sure that they are progressing well? How do you give feedback? How do you have those who are a little bit behind? So can we just talk a bit about this?
Okay, so thanks. The assessment comes in the first week. So the very first week we share the assessment with the students. But trust me, most of the students will not even look at it until much later. So, but for every session, I try to link whatever we're doing in that session with their assessment. I don't wait till the assessment week or the mid-term session where we talk about the assessment. Every session, so there's this particular strategy I teach, module that I teach. There are 4 tasks in the assessment. And the first task, we're going to cover that in the first 3 weeks. The second task, we cover that in the 4th, 5th, 6th week, and so on and so forth. While the last task is a reflection of everything they have learned. So from week 1, when we finish business environment, which is the topic for that particular one, understanding business environment, I tell them this is the task 1 of your assessment. And what we need you to do is to be able to explain, analyze the business environment of the company you are selecting. So it's very important for you to understand this topic. If you don't, there's a recording that you're going to have to go watch so that you can understand it, so that you'll be able to link that to the company you're selecting, maybe Apple or Samsung. What is the business environment that they're operating in? So when we get to the other week that we're talking about the digital innovation, in the organizations, I tell them this is the second task of your assignment. So across the weeks, I'm reminding them how this particular session is linked to your assessment. And towards the mid-term of so we bring the assessment brief in again to actually explain all the assessment brief and the materials, where they can find all those materials. And I used to encourage them, I always encourage them that they shouldn't wait until the last week before they start the assessment. They can actually start from week 1, week 2, week 3. They start taking some notes and dumping some stuff in that particular documents which they have saved for their assignments, and instead of waiting till the end. And in the last week, second to the last week and last week, which is assessment clinic, so we go over the assessments all over again. Most of the assessments or the modules I teach have something that I've created called assessment guidance, so which helps them to tackle all the assessment criteria, everything that is needed for the assessment, step by step. I give them a template in most cases as well. This is what I'm expecting to see. So key recommendations and conclusion, I'm expecting to see that. I'm expecting to see your reflection, and you can use Gibbs cycle to write your reflection. So I give them different things all along. And that particular last week is what we call the assessment clinic, where I expect them to bring their drafts to class. And I go desk to desk, checking what they bring to class, and I give them verbal feedback on that, and they take notes on that. I think about 50-60% of my students bring their assessment to class during this last week, which really helps them. And I see that in their
Yeah,
submission.
no, that's very helpful to start it the first week. And I remember once you told me, I still remember that, yeah, that you're always finishing the class, that you're not leaving without having questions. So
Yeah,
you really encourage students, right, to have questions, because sometimes it happens that, and this also shows when somebody hasn't read anything about the topic, they cannot have questions. Students will
yeah,
have questions if they've already invested some time into it, right? Isn't it so?
yeah.
So how do
Absolutely, absolutely. The first thing I do is when I finish the session, I ask them any question. And if it's the first class, they may be quiet and saying no question, and I tell them that's not going to happen in my class. If it happens in other classes, that's fine. Get that right now that in my class there will be questions. So what you're telling me is everything I have explained to you, you understood, which I doubt. Then I'm going to ask you a question. If you're unable to answer that, then and I ask them, what class do you have next? Most times they say they're on break. I said, that's fantastic. I'm on break as well. We're going to be here together for the next 1 hour after your class if you are not asking me any question, because I need you to challenge me. I need to ask me questions. What is clear? What is not clear? And if nobody is answering, I said, okay, that's fine. No question. Then I'm going to be asking questions. And I go from one hand to the other, asking questions randomly. So my students don't want me to directly ask them questions because that might throw them off guard. So because they know that I'm going to ask them, so as long as you give me comments or something or ask any question, and I'll tell them jokingly, the only question you shouldn't ask me is about my wife, because I'm going to spend the next 3 hours answering that. So don't ask me about that. Ask me about any question. It could be about your assessment. It could be about what we just talked about. And I see that really working, and they're already ready. Before I ask if they ask questions, they're ready for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that I love that. That's fascinating, and I already adopted this since I've heard this from you, and it's really, really great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually they don't ask questions. And on that, how do you help those who are a little bit behind because they lack the experience, or there are always people who are not, progressing as much? Do you have some tips on what to do and how to help them?
Yeah, that's really interesting because you always have that. No doubt about that. You're going to have people who probably, because I see people coming from engineering and they come to do masters in business. It's expected that they're not going to grasp all those concepts and all of that. But when you use real life example to explain, so they get the examples, but they may find it difficult to still connect. So when you're asking them questions, they may be the one that will probably be quiet, or people that are typically just shy, which I mean, I was there, so I understand. So I kind of know that the best way to engage with this kind of student is not to actually like look down them that they're unable to answer, and give them that opportunity to just like go over things again and explain over and over again. Then I tell them that I'm not picking on you when I make cold calls. That is actually in my nature. I have to make cold call, and you guys are going to forgive me for that. That if I call on you and you realize, why is this guy calling on me when I'm, please, apologies beforehand. So I let them know I'm going to be doing cold call. And what I realize is even these students that are shy, they still try to say things like one sentence, one phrase, or something. And I let them know that I was shy as well. I mean, I was just like that student who is not going to say anything, who is going to sit at the back. All of you that are sitting at the back, I feel you. That's where I used to sit because I didn't want the tutor to call me. But guess what? The tutor will still come to me and call me from there. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Just forgive me for that. So they know. I mean, so they all laugh and we just laugh about it and all of that. So when I'm walking towards the back, they know I'm already coming towards them. And I only had to do that for like 1, 2 classes. And I see that this student sitting at the back, some of them will even stand up and come and sit at the front. Because I challenge them that when you're sitting at the back, that means you're saying, don't call me. And some students will stand up and come to the front. I just use all of these to let them know I'm not picking on you. I just want us to understand what we're doing together and just feel at home and all of that. So I think it works over the couple of weeks that this quiet student will make effort to speak and ask questions over time. Yeah.
No, this is fascinating, fantastic. And my
Yeah.
last question is about tool. Are there any tools you use and you would recommend, or any resources that you use to prepare, or anything that you use in your either preparation or during the classes?
Yeah, I think majorly the tool I use at the beginning, which is to actually like ice breaking kind of things, I use Kahoot at the beginning. I think I use that a lot during induction session as well, asking people to talk about where they come from, how many hours they flew to London, and so on and so forth. And during sessions as well, a couple of times I use that as well to actually, if we're talking about a complex topic, I always try to know what they know on that topic. So I bring some key topics, subtopics from that particular topic, and I throw them in on Kahoot and ask them to like, okay, what do you understand by this? Which of these concepts have you heard before? And so on and so forth. So that already prepares them for, okay, these are the key topics or concepts or subtopics we're going to be discussing today. So once they all select that, maybe 50% of the class have heard about it before, 50% have not heard about it before. The next thing I do is those 50% that have heard about it before, let's hear what you know about it. So it doesn't have to be right. That's why you've paid. I just mentioned one amount. That's why you paid £15,000, for example, to come here to learn. Yeah. So I paid such amount before as well to learn. So, and I picked it. So just tell me what you know about this. And it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have, just whatever it is. And I see people just coming up and just explaining and all of that. And that really helps as well. So I think apart from Kahoot, I think that's a major one I normally use really.
That's a very good, and very good that you explained some use cases. Thank you so much, Femi. No, Femi, it's quite evident why students love you. You're such a wonderful tutor and leader and colleague as well. Yes,
Thanks.
thank you
Thanks a
so much.
lot.
I could listen to you forever. You really shared some amazing tips. Thank you so much for dedicating your time. I know how busy you are with everything
No
going on
worries
right
at
now,
all.
always. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Academic Room, and see you at the next one.